You don't need a better routine. You need a routine that works. Even when you don't want to follow it, because right now, if you're honest with yourself, your life is not controlled by your goals. It's controlled by your mood. And your mood is unstable. Some days, you feel inspired. You wake up early. You plan. You promise yourself this time will be different. And for a few hours, it is. You feel in control, focused, driven, but then something shifts. The energy fades. The clarity disappears. The urgency becomes negotiable. And suddenly, the same person who was ready to change their life in the morning is scrolling, delaying, avoiding by the afternoon, not because they don't know what to do, but because they don't feel like doing it anymore, and that's where everything breaks. You see, most people don't have a knowledge problem. They know they should wake up earlier. They know they should focus. They know they should stop wasting time. But knowledge is not the issue. Execution is, and execution fails the moment it becomes dependent on emotion. Because emotion is unstable. It rises and falls based on sleep, stress, environment, distraction, even the weather. So if your system requires you to feel ready before you act, you don't have a system, you have a condition. And conditions fail. This is the uncomfortable truth most people try to avoid. They don't lack discipline. They lack a structure that works when discipline feels impossible. They've built their life around the idea that they will act when they feel good. But life doesn't reward how you feel. It rewards what you repeat. Let that sink in. Not what you start. Not what you intend. Not what you promise yourself at midnight, but what you repeat. Consistently. When no one is watching, and repetition does not come from motivation. It comes from something much quieter, much colder, much more reliable. Structure. You see, motivation is loud. It makes you feel powerful. It convinces you that today is the day everything changes. But it disappears just as quickly. Structure doesn't feel powerful. It feels boring, predictable, repetitive, almost invisible. And that's exactly why it works. Because it doesn't rely on excitement. It survives without it. Think about the strongest people you know. Not the loud ones. Not the ones constantly talking about goals. But the ones who quietly move forward every single day. They don't wake up asking themselves how they feel. They don't negotiate with their emotions. They don't need to be in the mood. They made a decision, and then they removed the option to reconsider it. That's the difference. Most people decide, and then they keep checking in with themselves. Do I feel like doing this today? Am I in the right mindset? Maybe I'll start tomorrow. And every time they ask those questions, they reopen the door to quitting. Discipline doesn't fail because people are weak. It fails because people leave the door open. They allow negotiation. They allow excuses to enter. They allow emotion to override decision. And over time, that becomes identity. Not someone who fails occasionally, but someone who always starts and never finishes. Someone who believes they lack discipline. But the truth is far more precise. They don't lack discipline. They lack a non-negotiable system. Because a real system doesn't ask how you feel. It tells you what happens next. Whether you're tired, or focused, or distracted, or stressed, the system stays the same. And that's what most people resist. Not the work, but the lack of choice. Because choice feels like freedom. But in reality, it's the source of inconsistency. Every time you decide in the moment what to do, you increase the chance of doing nothing. Because your brain is designed to avoid discomfort, to delay effort, to choose the easier path. So when your life is built on moment-to-moment decisions, you are constantly negotiating against your own resistance. And resistance always wins. When given a voice, that's why the idea of motivation is so dangerous. It gives resistance power. It tells you, you'll do it later. You're not ready yet. Wait until you feel better. And slowly, your standards begin to drop. Not dramatically, but subtly. You skip one day, then another. You adjust your expectations. You lower your effort, until eventually, the version of you that once wanted more becomes someone who accepts less, not because you chose to fail, but because you allowed inconsistency to become normal. And once something becomes normal, it becomes invisible. You stop noticing it. You stop questioning it. You stop fighting it. That's how people lose control of their life. Not in one big decision, but in 1,000 small permissions. Permission to delay. Permission to skip. Permission to try again tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. Because tomorrow is not a day. It's a pattern of postponement, a pattern of emotional dependency, a pattern of waiting for the perfect moment that never arrives. So let's be clear about something. The problem is not your lack of motivation. The problem is that your life is still negotiable. Everything can be skipped. Everything can be delayed. Everything can be adjusted. And when everything is flexible, nothing is stable. That's why you feel stuck. Not because you're incapable, but because you haven't removed the option to quit. You haven't drawn a line. You haven't decided what is no longer up for discussion. Because the moment something becomes non-negotiable, it stops depending on how you feel. It becomes part of who you are, not something you try to do, but something you don't question anymore. Like brushing your teeth. You don't wake up and ask, "Do I feel like brushing today?" You just do it. No debate. No resistance. No emotional involvement. Because it's not optional, and that's the level your routine needs to reach. Not exciting, not inspiring. Automatic. Because automatic behavior doesn't require energy. It doesn't require willpower. It doesn't require motivation. It runs in the background, regardless of how you feel. But you cannot build that if your routine changes based on your mood, if your discipline disappears when things get hard, if your standards adjust when you're tired, because then you're not building a system, you're building a preference. And preferences are weak. They shift. They adapt. They disappear under pressure. A system doesn't. A system holds, even when you don't. And that is the side foundation most people are missing. Not more effort, not more goals, not more information, but a structure that removes negotiation. A structure that defines what happens even on your worst days. Because your best days don't define your life. Your worst days do. Anyone can be focused when they feel good. Anyone can be disciplined when they're motivated. But what happens when you're tired? When you're distracted? When you don't care? That's where your real system is revealed. And for most people, there is no system. Only intention. Only hope. Only temporary bursts of energy. Followed by collapse. That's why they keep restarting. Every week, every month, every year, always beginning, never stabilizing. Because they never built something that could survive them. They built something that required them at their best. And your best is not sustainable. Your best is temporary. But your structure, that can be permanent if you build it correctly. So the real question is not, what routine should you follow? It's much more uncomfortable than that. The real question is, what are you no longer allowed to skip, no matter how you feel? Because that's where discipline begins. Not in intensity, not in ambition, but in the quiet moment when you remove the option to quit. Discipline doesn't start with doing more. It starts the moment you remove the option to do nothing. Because as long as doing nothing is still available to you, you will choose it. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is efficient. It is designed to conserve energy, to avoid unnecessary effort, to delay discomfort whenever possible. So every time you leave a gap, every time you give yourself space to decide in the moment, you are not testing your discipline. You are testing your resistance. And resistance always has the advantage. It knows your patterns. It knows your excuses. It knows exactly how to delay you without making you feel like you failed. It whispers instead of forcing. Just 5 more minutes. You can do it later. You deserve a break. And just like that, your system collapses. Not in a dramatic way, but quietly, slowly, repeatedly. That's why most routines don't fail on day 1. They fail on day 3, day 5, day 10. They fail when the excitement fades and reality returns. Because the routine was built on energy, not on structure. And energy cannot be trusted. So, if you want something that lasts, you need to build differently. You need something that doesn't require you to be at your best. You need something that works, even when you don't care. That's where the silent system begins. Not with complexity, but with reduction. Most people try to improve their life by adding more habits, more tasks, more expectations. They overload themselves with ambition, and then they fail under the weight of their own plan, because the more you add, the more decisions you create, and every decision drains you. Every decision opens the door to hesitation. Every hesitation increases the chance of quitting. So, the first rule is simple: reduce. Cut everything unnecessary. Remove anything that requires thinking. Strip your routine down to the point where it becomes almost impossible to fail. Because success is not about doing more, it's about doing what matters, consistently, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. So instead of asking, what is the perfect routine? Ask a better question. What is the minimum I refuse to skip? Not the ideal version of you. Not the version of you on a good day, but the version of you on your worst day, tired, distracted, unfocused. What will that version still do? Because that's your real standard, not what you can do, but what you will do. No matter what, that's where the system starts. Small, almost unimpressive, but solid, unbreakable. It could be one action, one decision, one moment of execution, something so simple you can't justify skipping it. Not because it's easy, but because it's clear. And clarity removes resistance. The more unclear your routine is, the more space resistance has to operate. If you need to think, you give yourself time to hesitate. If you hesitate, you give yourself time to quit. So, the second rule is this: make it obvious. No ambiguity, no variation. Same action, same time, every day. Because repetition is not about improvement, it's about identity. Every time you repeat an action, you are not just completing a task, you are reinforcing a version of yourself. A version that shows up, a version that executes, a version that does not negotiate. And identity is far more powerful than intention, because intention changes, identity doesn't. You can intend to work hard and still be lazy. But if you believe you are someone who executes daily, you will find a way to act accordingly. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's the last thing you want to do. That's the power of silent repetition. It doesn't look impressive, it doesn't feel exciting, but it compounds, slowly, quietly, relentlessly, until one day, it becomes automatic. And that's the goal. Not motivation, not hype. Automation, a system that runs, even when you don't feel like running it. Because once something becomes automatic, it no longer requires discipline. It becomes default, and default behavior is what shapes your life. Not your peak performance, not your best intentions, but your default, what you do without thinking, what you do without effort, what you return to when everything else falls apart. That's why simplicity wins, not because it's easier, but because it survives. A complicated routine might work for a few days. A simple one can last for years, because it doesn't depend on your mood. It doesn't depend on your schedule. It doesn't depend on your motivation. It depends on one thing: decision. A decision that has already been made and is no longer open for discussion. That's the third rule. Eliminate negotiation, because negotiation is the beginning of failure. The moment you start asking, should I do this now? Can I skip today? Does it really matter? You've already lost control, because now your action is no longer certain. It's conditional, and conditional behavior is unstable. It changes based on how you feel. It adapts based on your environment. It disappears under pressure. Non-negotiable behavior doesn't. It stays, even when you don't. And that's what makes it powerful. It removes the burden of choice. It removes the need for willpower. It removes the internal debate that drains your energy, because the answer is already decided. You don't think, you execute. And execution is where everything changes. Because once you remove negotiation, you remove inconsistency. Once you remove inconsistency, you remove chaos. And once you remove chaos, you create stability. And stability is the foundation of discipline, not intensity, not ambition. Stability, the ability to do the same thing over and over again without needing to feel different. That's what builds real progress. Not bursts of effort, not temporary focus, but steady, repeated execution. And it doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to exist. Every day, without exception, because perfection creates pressure, and pressure creates resistance. But consistency creates momentum, and momentum creates identity. That's how you change, not by becoming someone new overnight, but by proving to yourself daily that you are no longer the person who quits. And that proof doesn't come from big actions. It comes from small ones, repeated, relentlessly, silently, until there is no doubt left. No internal argument, no hesitation, just action. And once you reach that point, discipline stops being something you try to build. It becomes something you live, without thinking, without effort, without emotion. And that's the system you're building. Not a routine that looks impressive, but a routine that survives reality. A routine that holds when you don't. A routine that continues, even when you break. Because that's the difference between people who change and people who keep restarting. One builds for the best version of themselves, the other builds for the worst. And only one of those is sustainable. So don't aim high, aim stable. Don't aim perfect, aim unbreakable. Because in the end, it's not what you do when you feel strong that matters. You don't fail because you are weak. You fail because you gave yourself permission to quit, not once, but many times, in small ways, almost invisible ways. Ways that don't feel like failure in the moment. You tell yourself, it's just today. I'll make up for it tomorrow. I'm just not in the right state right now. And each time you say those words, you are not just skipping an action. You are rewriting your standard, lower, softer, more negotiable, until eventually, nothing in your life is fixed anymore. Everything becomes optional, and when everything is optional, nothing gets done consistently. That's the hidden problem most people never see. They think discipline is about pushing harder, doing more, trying again with more intensity. But intensity is not the solution, because intensity cannot last. You cannot live your life at peak energy. You cannot depend on being motivated every day. And if your system requires that, it is already broken. So instead of building a system based on your best days, you build one based on your worst. Because your worst days are predictable. They will come, again and again. Days when you don't care. Days when you're tired. Days when everything feels heavy and pointless. And on those days, your real system is revealed. Not what you planned. Not what you intended, but what you actually do. So if you want to build something real, you need to design for that version of yourself. Not the motivated one, but the resistant one. The one that wants to quit. The one that looks for excuses. The one that negotiates. Because if your system can survive that version of you, it can survive anything. And that's where the structure changes. From flexible to fixed. From emotional to mechanical. From optional to non-negotiable. You remove the question, will I do this today? And replace it with, at what level will I do it? That's the shift. Not whether, but how much. Because once doing nothing is no longer available, your system becomes stable. And stability is everything. So here is the structure. Simpler, brutal, effective. 3 levels, not of effort, but of commitment. The first level is the one most people ignore because it feels too small, too insignificant, too easy. But this is the level that changes everything. The minimum, the baseline, the standard you do, no matter what, even on your worst day, especially on your worst day. This is not about progress, this is about identity. Because when everything falls apart, this is what remains. It could be 5 minutes, one task, one action. Something so small, you cannot justify skipping it. And that's the point, because resistance cannot argue with something that small. It cannot say, you don't have time. It cannot say, you're too tired. It cannot say, do it tomorrow. Because deep down, you know you can do it. And that removes the excuse. And when excuses are gone, execution becomes inevitable. This level is not impressive. No one will notice it. No one will respect it. But it is the most important level of your entire system. Because this is where your identity is protected. No matter how bad the day is, you don't break, you don't disappear, you don't reset. You show up, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, even if it feels meaningless. Because it's not about the result, it's about the message. The message that says, I don't quit. And that message, repeated daily, becomes who you are. The second level is your normal day, the version of you when things are stable, when you have energy, when your mind is clear. This is where most of your work happens. This is where progress is made. But this level is not your foundation, because it is not guaranteed. Some days you will have it, some days you won't. And if your system depends on this level, you will be inconsistent. So you don't rely on it, you use it. You take advantage of it, but you don't build your identity on it. Because identity must be stable, and stability comes from what you do. When everything else is unstable, then comes the third level. The level people chase, the level that looks impressive. High performance, maximum output, deep focus, long hours. This is where breakthroughs happen. This is where results accelerate. But this level is dangerous, if misunderstood, because people think this is the standard. They think this is what discipline looks like, and they try to live here every day, and they fail, not because they lack discipline, but because they built their expectations too high, too intense, too unsustainable. So when they can't maintain it, they collapse, they burn out, they quit, and they blame themselves. But the problem was never them. The problem was the system. It didn't allow fluctuation. It didn't allow reality. It didn't allow human limitation. A real system does. A real system adapts. Without breaking, it allows you to scale up when you have energy, and scale down when you don't, but it never allows you to stop. That's the difference, not intensity, continuity, because continuity builds identity, and identity builds discipline. So now, there is no more question, no more internal debate, no more, should I do it today? That question is gone, replaced by something much more powerful. How far can I go today without breaking the system? And that question changes everything, because now you are not fighting yourself. You are working within a structure that holds you, even when you don't feel strong, even when you don't feel motivated, even when you don't feel anything at all. And that's the point most people miss. Discipline is not about feeling strong. It's about removing the need to feel strong, because strength fluctuates, emotion fluctuates, energy fluctuates, but standards can remain fixed. If you decide them, if you protect them, if you refuse to negotiate with them, and once that happens, your life begins to stabilize. Not because things get easier, but because you become consistent. And consistency is what creates results. Not occasional effort, not bursts of motivation, but repeated action, day after day, regardless of how you feel. That's what separates people who change from people who keep starting over. One builds intensity, the other builds systems, and systems always win. Because systems don't depend on emotion, they don't depend on circumstances, they don't depend on luck. They run quietly, relentlessly. Discipline is not something you do, it is someone you become. And most people never understand that. They think discipline is an action, a behavior, a temporary effort they apply when they feel ready. But discipline doesn't work like that. Because anything that depends on how you feel will disappear the moment you don't feel like doing it. And that's exactly why most people stay stuck. They are trying to change their life without changing who they are. They are trying to act disciplined while still identifying as someone who quits. And that contradiction cannot hold. Because in the end, you will always act in alignment with your identity, not your goals, not your plans, not your intentions, your identity, the story you believe about yourself, the standard you accept as normal, the version of you that feels familiar. That's what controls your behavior. So if deep down, you still see yourself as someone inconsistent, someone who struggles, someone who needs motivation, Then, no matter how many routines you build, you will eventually break them, not because they don't work, but because they don't match who you believe you are. And your mind will always pull you back to what feels familiar. That's why real change is not about adding new actions. It's about removing the old identity. The one that negotiates, the one that delays, the one that waits until it feels right. Because as long as that version of you still exists, it will always find a way back in. It will always whisper, "You can skip today. It's not that serious. You'll start again tomorrow." And if you listen, even once, you reopen the door. That's how fragile most people's discipline is. Not because they are weak, but because they never closed the door completely. They left space for the old version of themselves to return. So, if you want something different, you need to do something most people avoid. You need to make a decision that has no reverse. A decision that is not based on emotion, not based on motivation, but based on identity. A decision that says, "This is who I am now." Not who I'm trying to become, not who I hope to be, but who I am, right now. And from that moment on, your actions are no longer optional. They are a reflection of that identity. You don't ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" You ask, "Is this what I do now?" And if the answer is yes, you execute, without discussion, without delay, without emotion, because that's what identity does. It removes uncertainty. It removes hesitation. It removes the internal conflict that drains your energy, because the decision has already been made. And once the decision is made, your job is simple. Follow through. That's it. No drama, no overthinking, no waiting, just execution. And the more you repeat that, the stronger that identity becomes, not through belief, but through proof, daily proof, silent proof. Proof that you show up, even when you don't feel like it. Proof that you act, even when it's inconvenient. Proof that you don't negotiate, even when it's uncomfortable. And over time, that proof replaces doubt. It replaces hesitation. It replaces the old story, until one day, you don't recognize the person you used to be anymore. Not because you changed suddenly, but because you changed consistently, quietly, without needing validation, without needing recognition, without needing anyone to see it. And that's the part most people struggle with, the silence. Because in the beginning, no one notices, no one claps, no one cares. You wake up early. No one sees it. You do your routine. No one praises it. You stay consistent. No one rewards it. And your mind starts to question. Does this even matter? Is this even working? Why am I doing this if no one sees it? Because you are still used to external validation, still used to feedback, still used to feeling like your effort should be recognized. But real discipline doesn't work like that. It grows in silence. It builds in isolation. It develops without approval, because it is not for others. It is for you. It is the agreement you made with yourself. And that agreement does not need an audience. It does not need praise. It does not need confirmation. It only needs consistency. Day after day, action after action, choice after choice, until the result becomes undeniable. And one day, people will notice, not the routine, not the effort, but the outcome. They will see your focus, your stability, your control, and they will ask, how did you become so disciplined? How did you change like that? And from their perspective, it will look sudden, like something just clicked, like you woke up one day, different. But they didn't see the truth. They didn't see the quiet mornings, the boring repetitions, the days you showed up, when nothing felt worth it. They didn't see the internal battles, the moments you wanted to quit, but didn't. They didn't see the system you built that carried you, when you couldn't carry yourself, because all of that happened in silence. And that is the power most people underestimate. Silent discipline, no noise, no attention, no validation, just action, relentless, consistent, unseen, until it becomes unstoppable. And once you reach that point, you no longer need motivation. You no longer need inspiration. You no longer need to try, because you are no longer the person who depends on those things. You are the person who executes no matter what. And that changes everything, because now Your life is no longer controlled by your mood, no longer shaped by your emotions, no longer limited by your excuses. It is controlled by your standards. And standards, when enforced consistently, create results that emotion never could. So this is your foundation, not motivation, not inspiration, not temporary effort. Discipline, quiet, relentless, non-negotiable. And it starts with something small, something simple, something you cannot skip. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because the longer you wait, the stronger the old identity becomes, and the harder it is to break. So don't wait, don't prepare, don't overthink. Decide right now, what is one thing you are no longer allowed to skip? One action, one standard, one non-negotiable. And once you decide, protect it, no matter what. Because that one decision, repeated daily, will change everything. Not instantly, not dramatically, but permanently, and that is how discipline is built. Not in noise, but in silence. Not in intensity, but in repetition. Not in motivation, but in identity. So start small, stay consistent, and never break the code.